What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Twist, episode 148, a regular YouTube video web series podcast thingy. My name is Meowth, and as usual, I'm joined by my two good friends and co-hosts, Roffle and Corbett. Guys, Twist is out. Hearthstone's finally saved. How are you guys doing?
I mean, you meme, but like, I've maybe been enjoying Hearthstone quite a bit more than I have in recent history. So, yeah, Hearthstone is saved. I think that we talked about this before, but this is again what I wish Twist had been the first time through. I think that would have appealed to a lot more people and turned off a lot fewer people. And it's been quite a bit of fun. There's a fair amount of nostalgia as well as some new stuff that I'm sure we'll get into later.
Yeah, it's just been really exciting. With some slight bumps in the road, which we'll evaluate, but I think it's been really great. I've really enjoyed jumping in, and I've played like very little Wild. I think Roffle, we were talking before the show, Roffle is way out in front of me in terms of the rank. So everything right where it needs to be right now.
Just clearly a skill issue.
Yeah, I'm still Bronze 10 Wild. I don't know about you guys, but like I think Roffle is by far and away the Wild expert right now. And so we'll be coming to you for all of our Wild opinions.
Oh, I've got all of the answers. No matter what question you're asking, the answer is draw chamber and play it on 2.
Wait, are we talking about Twist or Wild? Hold on.
Yes.
All right. So, I mean, we are still kind of technically a Wild podcast, so let's talk about Wild for like 2 minutes. Let's talk about Caverns of Time impact on Wild. And I can sum it up in one sentence, and that is discard Warlock, be broken. Hey, Chamber,
Ooh.
Like we predicted, pretty good card.
Who could have predicted this?
Not
this
us, 'cause we're not smart enough.
Shocking. And it, like, honestly, it's not even just Chamber. Like, Chamber is far and away the best card in the deck, but like, there's a lot of really silliness that happened as a result of some of the buffs as well. The deck was doing just fine before Chamber released on the back of Tiny Knight of Evil, the Dark Bargain buff, even Silver War Golem. It's just like, why? These are good cards that were played in Wild viable decks at various points. Why did we need to for like specifically Tiny Knight and Silver War Golem? Why did we need to choose the goodest cards of an archetype that has been oppressive at times and make them better? And then on top of that, I think they just massively overdid it with Dark Bargain, and then obviously Chamber is just an outrageous card.
Yeah, Chamber, oh boy. Like the mulligan win rate on Chamber is so silly. Yeah. Wild beat Disco Warlock. It's big portion of the meta. Has pretty much the highest win rate. There's some other like good decks that are competing similarly, but Disco Warlock is far and away like the most popular thing, and probably the thing that holds up the best at higher ranks. As well, compared to a deck, say, like Mech Paladin. I think Disco Warlock has a little bit more player agency, despite being so coin flippy, as weird as that might sound. But yeah, Disco Warlock popular, and Warrior really good, because it beats Disco Warlock okay amounts. Like, it's not amazing. Sometimes Tiny Knight sticks and it accidentally becomes like a 17, 16, because that's a 2-drop that should exist. But yeah, I don't know, Mech Pally good, Warrior good. Frog Shaman, good, but Disco Warlock best.
Yeah, all of those decks, aside from Warrior, like, basically, we've talked about this in the past, especially during United and Stormwind, have a very narrow window of, like, turns that the game lasts. So most of the good decks are just trying to end the game within, like, the first maybe 5 turns at most. And then Warrior is just trying to stop them from doing that and then win later. So it's like, the game's still effectively over, even in the Warrior matches, once they stop them from doing that thing in the first few turns. So it just, like, it doesn't feel great. And like you said, I think there feels like very little player agency in any of these decks, other than just, like, what did I queue into and what did I draw? Warrior probably has the most, because, like, the most could go wrong when you're, or more could go wrong when you're on the defensive side of things. But, like, I mean, anyone that's played a control deck can pick up Warrior and be fine with it, right? Even people that necessarily haven't. So, the last thing that I do want to say about Wild is there is a Wild Heroic Brawliseum coming up soon. We talk about this a lot, that you should not play in the Wild Heroic Brawliseum, but like never has that been more true than this moment right now, because not only is it very bad expected value, but like very little player agency is associated with it. So like even if you are an above average or highly skilled player, that's not going to matter too much if like you queue into 3 mech paladins or like a few disco locks and they just like non-game you. It just doesn't matter. Like there's very little agency involved in the format right now with those top decks.
Yeah, I don't know if they're offering like a portrait for the new Brawl. I don't think they've said anything just yet. If they do, then I might play it. But I'm very nervous like about going into the Brawl personally. Like I don't know if I want to really queue up Disco Warlock and, like 3 mirrors could easily just end it in the first 3 runs. Like, it really does not take much. So, it's probably very difficult for me to come up with a good reason to go for the Brawl. And this is like me being the highly engaged, wanting to always play as many Brawls as possible in the past. So, I might just keep playing Twist. That also seems like a good place to keep playing Hearthstone.
Yeah, I don't want to harp too much more on Wild, given that I haven't played any in the past week and a half. But I think I just want to touch on the Roffle point on player agency, and I want to touch on the Corb thing of Discard Warlock, coin flip nature. I feel like with all the ways that they've pushed Discard Warlock in the past year or so, I feel like the coin flippy nature of it, it's a lot lower because you get to kind of choose what you're discarding a lot of the time, or your hand's so small that you're always discarding what you want to. So I don't even know how coin flippy it is anymore. It's just like a really good aggressive deck. I don't know. That being said, the player agency that Roffle brought up thing, where you feel like you have very little to none, been feeling that for like the past couple of months, and so I'm glad that I'm not the only one. And part of the reason I was getting a little bit frustrated with Wild, I remember getting pretty salty on streams when I got like non-gamed 5 or 6 games in a row, and so Twist came out at the perfect time, is all I gotta say. And I don't know if we'll be doing a Wild podcast, like specifically focusing on Wild for the next couple of weeks, because I don't know how much we're going to play Wild in the next few weeks since we have Twist available to us. Yeah. But
I mean, a couple things on that. You say that Twist came at the perfect time, but a part of the reason that Wild is where it is right now is because of like the Caverns of Time release that is for Twist, right? So Twist is responsible here in part for the state.
Wild was already ruined.
It was bad. It was bad, but it got much worse. It got notably worse.
I will add on, like, it is that Wild is worse now because of Twist directly, because of the new cards, like you're saying. But it's also because of the last 6 months, right? like 6 months ago or something, is they decided they were going to do Twist, and Wild was going to take this direction. So, like, it's right now, but it's also kind of like the long-term picture of this is what Wild is adding up to because of Twist, which is fine. It's just I'm not going to play Wild.
Yeah. I know we had the dev interview, and so I don't want to kind of project what they're gonna do balance wise, if anything, when it comes to Wild. But paraphrasing here, they did say that they were going to be keeping a close eye on the new cards that they released in Caverns of Time, and looks like the location's busted in Twist too. We'll talk about that maybe in a little bit here. And so maybe I would expect a balance adjustment to that, but I wouldn't really be expecting much of in terms of any like Wild specific changes for the format for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I would expect 0 Wild targeted changes. Just one card in particular that will affect Wild.
Right. Yeah, it'll be like how Standard has always collateral Wild. It'll be now Twist collaterally in Wild. So don't expect any Wild focus changes. Yeah, and I know it's not what we want, but it's just kind of the reality. It's what it's going to be. So, yep. All right. That's it for Wild. Let's move on to the exciting stuff. Let's talk about Twist. Twist is out. It's been out for about a week. I know all 3 of us have been having a blast. Let's start with the busted stuff, and then we'll get into some of the fun stuff if you guys are good with that. And let's continue this trend. Let's talk about this chamber card. Let's start with Discard Warlock. Again, who could have seen this being strong? I think a trend that we might talk about is card draw generally kind of hard to come by in Twist. A lot of decks are playing stuff like Azure Drakes again to draw cards. And then you have this anomaly that is Discard Warlock that has Chamber for 2 mana, draw 6 with additional payoffs, which seems pretty good. Discard Warlock seems to be performing well. It's kind of just like a discard focused zoo deck, but yeah, discard terrorizing both Twist and Wild.
Yeah, there have been a couple different variants of it, and I don't think it's just people refining it. It's kind of similar to the original Time through Wild, where there was like the Talented Arcanist version of the Cataclysm combo and that type of thing. There's also like a bit of a heavier version that I've been seeing that like looks to discard your Doom Guards early and then choke all and kill people that way. It's almost certainly better because it doesn't run Demon, or worse. Sorry, it's almost certainly worse because it doesn't run Demon Fuse, which is also a pretty nutty card. It turns out. You stick a lot of turn 1 or 2 demons, and they just win games if you hit a Demon Fuse on curve, without really requiring much discard shenanigans in some cases. So there's a lot of cards that were overbuffed in addition to just Chamber again being a nutty card. I talk about this a lot, but like Chamber is obviously the biggest offender. I think you could change every single number on the card, from the mana cost, the durability, to the number of cards that you draw, and it would still probably be one of the best cards in the deck. Like you could simultaneously change all of them, and it's still maybe your best card. Like that's ludicrous.
It's a silly card. The numbers don't make any sense. We knew this. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's such an anomaly for a format that doesn't have the same kind of card drawing generation as modern Hearthstone and Twist. Sorry, and the location is a very like modern card in what it can do. So, yeah, I don't know. It's silly. It'll get changed. Like, it has like an incredible, absurd outlier mulligan win rate in both formats, but like even more so in Twist actually. There is actually one card that can kind of compete with it, which might be a funny surprise I might bring up later. But yeah, I don't know. It's basically like a Barnes that you get to play 2 of.
Yeah. Don't put it like that. That's spooky. I would be absolutely shocked if whenever they do their balance change, if the location is not in here somewhere. Like this card is 100% getting changed.
Yeah, guarantee. Yeah. Which is a little confusing that it came out like this in the first place, but whatever.
Yeah, that aside, it'll get changed. Discard Warlock will come down in power. Roffle also brought up Demon Fuse. I know we brought this up when we were doing theater crafting and stuff. Patches being a demon, really huge for stuff like Demon Fuse. I'm pretty sure Demon Fuse needs to be in that deck. Demon Fuse, good card. People are also doing like Dark Bombs to draw their Dark Bargains and Demon Fuses, which make a lot of sense to me. I like that. I'm seeing some people play Siphon Souls, which I'm not like super convinced by. I don't understand it. Don't know why they're doing it, but I keep seeing it, so I might be missing something, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
It makes no sense to me too. It obviously appeared in that slower Cho'Gall version, but like there have been situations where I'm about to stabilize and then like, oh, suddenly Siphon Soul is hitting you. It's like this cannot be correct in like any context that isn't this exact one. But people keep running it, and it keeps trolling me.
I don't know if Siphon's that bad, to be honest. I think it might be okay. The idea of basically that Eye Stalker is a very silly card, and then once they play Eye Stalk of Cthulhu, I forgot that's the name, right? Eye Stalk of Cthulhu. Then the game kind of ends. So, like, I can see the idea of Siphon Soul. It's not the most inefficient card in Twist as like a 4-mana removal spell. Like, yeah, it would be better sometimes to just kill them over the top, but sometimes they go a little bit too wide, and then Dark Bargain isn't really a guarantee. So I kind of get the idea. It just sort of depends on just how much like Eye Stalker you're really seeing in the format. But I don't think it's the worst, to be honest.
Yeah, like I said, I might be missing something, but it'll like the matchups where you like the taunts from Eye Stalk and the taunts from stuff like Control Warrior. I'm sitting there, I'm like, you have Dark Bargain, which just feels like much better than Siphon Soul. Do we really need more of those effects? And maybe you do. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But something that did make a whole lot of sense was like Cho'Gall. It felt kind of weird, conceptually putting this 8-drop in your deck, but when your 8-drop draws you theoretically like 6 or 7 cards that clear the board and do like 12, 14 damage from hand, with like Doomguards and Soulfires and Fists and stuff. I kind of dig it. I really have been liking the Cho'Gall in that deck with or without Siphon Souls, but it seems like very strong in that discard deck.
Okay, maybe I've just not queued into, like, I feel like a lot of the times when I see Cho'Gall, it's with a lot of other goofy stuff. So maybe I just am usually getting killed by the good cards before the good lists like drop the Cho'Gall. So maybe that's been my problem.
Yeah, I don't know about Cho'Gall. Like, I was trying it, but it's kind of hard to get a gauge because you're discarding it a lot of the time. Like, it's an 8-mana card. So it's like, it's very rare that you actually get to play it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Like, it just means that it mightn't hit the board a lot of the time. But I don't know, it could be alright. Like, it's probably not very good in mirrors, but against a deck like a Warrior or even the Rogue, it could actually be very good. So that's always nice. Especially if you, like, discard a Dark Bargain. It could be a nice way to get that back and help pump through an Ice Stalker as well, if you don't want to run like Siphon Soul.
Yeah, I wonder how much of my perception of Cho'Gall is skewed because it's really good when you have the location, but also the location's really good. So I don't know how much of like the Cho'Gall feeling good is just I had a location, and so therefore, you know, I'm like super ahead anyways, and then Cho'Gall is just like oppressive and hard to beat.
Yeah, man, it's a disgusting value bomb. So like, if you're playing a deck that loses the value or wants to grind the disco lock out, then that's kind of bad.
Yeah. All right, man. You guys, anything else you guys want to talk about in terms of disco lock?
I'll just say I'm a little surprised still that it's this good. Like, I feel like I should throw that out there. Like, I was very like I theorycrafted a disco list that I thought looked solid, but this isn't the deck that existed like in this era of Hearthstone, so you didn't really know exactly whether it was going to get there. But it is the highest win rate deck right now, from what we can see on HS Replay and stuff. So or at least up there. Like, there are 3 that are really good. This is probably the best right now. But yeah, I don't know, a little bit surprising that it did get there. But then you kind of look at the card quality, and it's like, oh, that makes sense. So easy to not get try not to get too trapped into what was playable that era, because there's a lot of things that are different right now than Gadgets then.
Yeah, no, a lot of things. A lot of things were bumped pretty significant, or shoved pretty significantly for this card in particular, and they got the best card in the best deck available to them in the wild format. So if a card is the best card in the best deck in wild, it's going to be outrageously powerful in a lower power level format like Twist.
All right. So let's speak about another deck that didn't exist back in this original era, and that is Jade Rogue / Cthulhu Rogue, or just like these decks are basically Tempo Rogue, is essentially what they are, Tempo Rogue variants. Speaking of decks that got 1 billion cards buffed, Jade Rogue got like 4 cards buffed, and then like the 2 new cards that they got in Jade Telegram and the Scarab Lord kind of busted as well. They're kind of up there with the location in terms of just how impactful and how strong they are for the format. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. For a strong deck like this, I like playing it. So it's a little weird when the strong deck is that, but yeah, Jades and Cthuns in Rogue.
Yeah, I don't particularly like queuing into it every other game that I play in Twist these days. So like, and that's true. That would be true of any deck. Like, I just don't like queuing into the same decks that frequently. And I think one of the issues, like Jade Telegram is clearly seems to be a power outlier, as well as the Scarab Lord. But it's also like Jade Telegram, in addition to, I forgot how absurdly hard Sprint was buffed, to the point where like the Rogue always has card advantage, no matter what the matchup is. And even in a potential like aggressive, like if you're the beatdown deck as a Jade Rogue, which you are quite often, you're going to have more card advantage than the control deck, who is trying to like react to that situation, which is, generally not how that works. I know Corb can probably speak to this a little bit better because he was kind of like recognizing this early on, but like it also has the flexibility with the strong Jade stuff to then squeeze in some maybe Cthulhu shenanigans to like contest the slower control decks that are trying to just like remove all of the Jade stuff, and then like it gets the early game with the Jades and then just like piles bombs with the Cthulhu stuff. I don't know how successful that is, but it makes sense given the, I'm sure, third deck that we'll talk about has been increasing in popularity.
Yeah, Jade Rogue can kind of do it all a little bit. Like, it fights the board really well. It never runs out of cards. It has strong late game. You can build it like that little bit more aggressive with the pirates and like eviscerates, and that's really good. But you can also fit in this Cthulhu package, and that seems to be just as good, if not maybe slightly better. Like it does seem to be slightly better right now from what I can tell. That's probably largely on the back of Ice Stalk of Cthulhu being a very steely Hearthstone card. That card is, I kind of outlined my initial reaction to the format after I think a couple days, and I was like, yeah, location needs to be changed, Scarab Lord, which we haven't talked about, that card probably needs to be changed. But if I was gonna have like a third candidate, well, a third and fourth, it'd probably be Ice Stalk and then maybe Jade Telegram. Like, those are the things that probably stand out. But then Warrior has its own thing, so we'll get to that. But yeah, Cthulhu in Jade. You do just kind of run good stuff. Like, you just cut some of the like recovery tools, like the AoE, you cut some of the burn, cut some of the pirates, and then you shove in Cthulhu, and you kind of mitigate that loss of AoE by just having the Eye Stalker as sort of the I win against aggro card. And then you can go so late with the Warrior matchup. Like, you have the Jades are already so hard to deal with, and you throw in like Cthulhu on top of that, like, it's so over. But yeah, like, Sprint is such a big outlier in this format. The Jades ramp so hard. I mean, this deck is very fun. It wasn't fun when I queued into 70% Rogue on like day 3 of the format. Literally 70% over like a 50 game sample. That made me tilt out of my mind. But if I saw it like 20%, that would be fine. I wouldn't have a problem with that.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody's playing it because it's new, right? Because Jades and Cthulhu never really worked in Rogue before, and so it's like, wow, they're finally here. They're here because they got a billion cards buff, but they're finally here, so I get to play them. And it's a fun archetype to play, right? It's a tempo rogue, so I understand why there's 70% of people playing rogue, but also, yeah, we have to talk about the Scarab Lord card. This Gong is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. That is a 4-mana 17/17. Why? Why does this Gong get 2 durability? Why does it summon after the AoE? I'm so confused by this Gong. I hate this Gong.
Yeah, the summoning after the AoE is also very frustrating, because like I had a situation where I had this beautiful Holy Nova that lined up perfectly into the opponent's board, and I'm just like, well, wait, that just gives them 2 more boards of this stupid card. I have had other situations where I find the perfect board clear, but it's like a symmetric board clear, so it actually does nothing. And it's like, it's so stupid. On top of that, like, what's the card? The 3-mana Discover card exists in the format.
Lotus Agents?
Lotus Agent, thank you. And that has a reasonably high probability of hitting Bloodlust in Rogue after the Scarab Lord, which I gotta tell you, having had it happen, feels really bad when you're just like taking, 21 or 28 damage on turn 5 for no reason, with no ability to play around it. So yeah, the card is like, we kind of talked about how it was looking to be a pretty strong card, but then like in practice, some of those idiosyncrasies like make it so much worse. Like situations that you don't really think about when you're looking at the card in isolation, but then when you play against it, it's like, oh, this sucks. This just sucks. Like, you can't whirlwind it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's intentional or not. Like, I haven't paid super close attention to the wording. I'm pretty sure it says after, so I guess it does make sense.
Yeah, it says after.
Yeah, but it's really annoying when you're sitting there with like a Hellfire or a Volcanic Potion. You're just like, well, this doesn't do anything because they get 7/1/1s again. I wouldn't be surprised to see this card also get hit. I think the easiest thing is just like Gong to maybe a 0/1 or a Death Rattle or something. But yeah, this card it's insane.
Yeah. I've had to Jade Shuriken way too many of my own gongs because you just gotta kill it. Like they fill the board, you gotta waste 2 mana killing the gong before they, can do anything with it again. But yeah, it's very frustrating. The whenever and after is also very unintuitive, I think, because most effects that have this type of effect, whether it's like most cards that have this type of effect, like Imp Gang Boss, or I don't know, they're just a lot more like whenever, not after, for like a aura type thing going on. I don't know. The fact that it says after is really throwing me off. So I don't know. I expect Scarab Lord to get a adjustment, probably. But yeah, we're good.
Yeah. One last thing on Jade Telegram. I think it's a strong card. I don't know that it's nearly on the level of something like Scarab Lord, but it's really unfun to play against as well. In addition to everything else, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't know how strong it actually is. But when it's strong and also super unfun, it's another prime candidate target for a nerf. I think. I wonder if they would do something like instead of just bumping it up to like 4 mana or something like that. If you like the opponent got to draw a card, like you shuffle something in, but then they get to draw to make it less of a feels bad and less of kind of just like ripping cards out of your opponent's hand. It feels like it was designed for Wild, which makes it feel way too oppressive in Twist.
Yeah, I feel like just cycling a card is probably a better middle ground than like mana, because there's no mana cost that's going to make that feel good, man. Like I say this as somebody who, plays a lot of mono black control in Magic and loves making my opponents discard. I recognize how evil that is, and I recognize that it shouldn't be a strong strategy, especially in Hearthstone where there's no like direct counterplay to it. And then like we talked about, like you combo that with the outrageous amount of draw you get from sprint, especially a prep sprint in this format, and you always have more cards than the opponent. It doesn't matter when you play the Jade Telegram, it's likely going to be good is kind of the main issue. And then on top of that, like, discard a card from your opponent's hand probably shouldn't come on the back of a 5/5 body for 3 mana. Like what?
Yeah. I think if you make it pick one, shuffle one, then they draw one, I think you probably have to adjust the cost. Like I think that's just too weak at that point. Like you probably send it to 2 or something.
I'm okay with them like making it bad because it doesn't feel like, even in its current state, do you think it's strong enough for Wild? Like, would you play this standalone as a disruption card in Wild? No. So then, like, shouldn't we just like completely balance it for Twist? Like, bringing the Jade Rogue deck down. Like, are we okay with this just being like a medium card, but it is the 3rd Rogue Jade card, and that makes it okay?
Well, I think 3 mana summon a Jade and don't create any card advantage. I think that's just like so bad. Like I think that needs to be buffed. Because what's more important, like deal 3 damage on the board is a lot more valuable than shuffle they draw 1, in my opinion. Because shuffling they draw 1 is like not very valuable whatsoever. It doesn't create any card advantage. Like, yeah, sometimes you hit a key card, but most of the time they're gonna get like another option that helps them out. Like that's such a insane nerf. It's such a big nerf. I'm not saying it, but it's such a huge nerf for the card. So I would buff it probably.
I'm okay with it not being card advantage, and like I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be card advantage. I'm saying like let's put like 2 mana or something.
Yeah.
If you do that,
I'm worried that it's still going to be the deck's still going to be busted because it feels like
probably. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. These decks that we're talking about are like. Do you guys remember that Wild format where we had 3 decks? They were called Pirate Warrior, Odd Hunter, and Even Lock. And then no one else could play anything else. That's kind of what like Twist is right now with three archetypes. There's such an insane gap between the main 3 and everything else. So it's like, yeah, you could probably like nudge them in quite a lot of ways. And I wouldn't really argue too much about that. But I'd rather try and keep the cards themselves pretty decent. Just hit more stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair. All right.
The only thing I'll say about that is I think it's probably unlikely that they'll hit more things in a format like Twist if like Wild is our baseline for how it's going to be balanced, or even like a barometer for it. I think it's unlikely they do large scale changes. I think they hit very specific outliers and probably hit them hard.
How many cards got changed in Twist 1.0 in beta? What was that?
They got 3 cards banned, right?
Yeah, 3.
3. Yeah. Okay, so it was
And
like
those are just direct bans because they didn't do any balance changes, just removed them.
Yeah, I imagine because Caverns is going to be sticking around for a while, that they'll be a lot more likely to do nerfs this time than bans. So
I think nerfs to Caverns cards. I'd be very surprised to see if they like reverted buffs or adjusted things that weren't Caverns of Time cards. But I think they would, because I remember in the Definite, I'm probably paraphrasing because I don't know. I am paraphrasing because I don't know the exact words. But I remember them saying something along the lines of they were going to keep a close eye on these things, and they were more willing to step in if they weren't like appropriate power level. And so I would expect a lot of balance changes to specifically new cards. I think that's my perception going into whenever we get a balance patch. But all right, we're skirting around this third deck here, and let's talk about Control Warrior. So we have to preface all of this with Control Warrior feels like it's riding a lot on the back of this card that's not supposed to be in the format in Sword Eater. And so I know it's been a little bit of a community outrage and a little bit of discussion and arguments on Twitter. The card's not supposed to be in the format, but, you know, can't be mad at people for putting it in their deck because they don't know. But it's in the format. It seems to be very, very good in Control Warrior. Do we think that Control Warrior, once this eventually gets patched out, because I'm assuming it will, how are we feeling about something like Control Warrior sans Sword Eater?
I've been running my decks without Sword Eater, just on principle, and mostly just like I don't want to create a deck that someone wants to play and then like they can't play it once it gets removed, which hopefully will be soon. And it does fine. Like the time it feels worse to not have it is when you're in the mirror and your opponent drops it and you're just like, man. Like, so that's a bit of a bummer. But yeah, like it tutors well off of stolen goods. It's a very strong card in the deck, but I think the deck is kind of succeeding now just in part because of like its matchup. The same reason Warrior is succeeding in Wild as well is it's just like got a decent matchup spread. Like the Sword Eater probably helps the most into Disco Lock just for like it lines up so nicely into a lot of their minions. And I don't like the matchup against Jade Rogue, at least in my experience, doesn't feel as overwhelmingly positive, but I don't know. It also is just kind of a bit of a jank killer too. So it's got a lot of things going for it that I think will probably continue even without the Sword Eater.
I think Sword Eater is one of the best cards, obviously, in the deck. Probably, I don't know, like best or second best card you can find at your mulligan. Like it's a real, it's not meant for this era of Hearthstone. It's a good card. That said, yeah, I think Warrior will be fine, like more than fine. I think like you take out Sword Eater, it would still be one of the top 3 classes, easy. So I think it'll be fine. The card that I underrated the most by far was Blast from the Past. That card is absolutely cracked. And Warrior got some really interesting buffs as well. That definitely I definitely underrated what Warrior had the capacity to do. But yeah, the like Iron Juggernaut and Blast from the Past create a ton of pressure and lethality, which you wouldn't really, expect necessarily. But combine that with things like Acolyte of Pain, you still have like the War Axe and stuff. And there's also one other card that's also super, super broken in Warrior. That, I mentioned there was a card that had like a mulligan win rate that was rivaling Chamber. It's Hobart.
No shot.
No.
I don't
well,
believe you.
How is the deck doing though?
Really good.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Warrior really strong. Yeah, Warrior in general really strong. Hobart Warrior really, really strong as well.
Is this Hobart Pirate Warrior or Hobart like Control Warrior?
Like a Control Warrior, like a mid-rangey pile type warrior. Like with late game and
Yeah.
How much is Hobart relying on Sword Eater?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good question, but like you do still like even if you lose Sword Eater, you still have like First Mate and Fiery War Axe. Like so, you there is some risk with that Sword Eater that like Hobart gets worse and stuff. But I don't know, you still got like a pretty good weapon density. That it should be pretty playable on curve, like whenever you want.
Yeah, but I think that like specifically Sword Eater is such a low cost in a Hobart deck because it like provides a minion and a weapon to get online. So like I think it's I think that I could see that deck taking a bigger hit than like your N'Zoth control warrior or something along those lines, losing out on Sword Eater. So it's probably a little bit more reliant there. But I mean, I guess that's not surprising. That's a lot of stats on Hobart, right? And like Warrior just kind of really wants to drop a big dumb idiot every turn, and like Hobart makes those idiots bigger and dumber. So what more could you ask for?
Yeah, I was already toying around with the idea of Hobart in something like Pirate Warrior because Pirate Warrior was kind of trash, but Hobart and Control Warrior, I am really curious to see what happens and if the win rate stays super high once Sword Eater goes away, because I feel like Sword Eater has like colored my perception of Control Warrior as in like I don't know how much of this is real. Like it felt good to play, it always felt good to like strong when it was playing against me, but I was always just like, but like they played a Sword Eater this game, so how much of this was like real, you know? And so I'm interested whenever that balance change happens and they remove it from the format, like how good does Hobart look? How good does Control Warrior look? No, but I do want to circle back to Blast from the Past, because I remember very clearly that we kind of laughed at this card and glossed over it when it was revealed, because it was like, man, like why would we want to summon Boobots and like what good are spare parts gonna do, yada yada yada. Man, I forgot how much I hate Boombots. This thing is insane. I also want to talk about Timeline Accelerator into Iron Juggernaut. Iron Juggernaut on turn 4 is kind of insane. Yeah, I think the like really greedy, slow Control Warrior piles not good. Just shuffle bombs into your opponent's deck. You're Bomb Warrior. You're not Control Warrior. Just boom bottom and kill them that way. Control Warrior's been fun to play though. Like I've really been enjoying I've been playing also without Sword Eater, but like Blast from the Past, Iron Juggernaut, even stuff like Grom has just been like really really good and performing really strong. Also, Baron being a 7/7 is kind of insane in this format. I just want to put that out there as well.
Yeah, he's great at clearing your opponent's bombs in the mirror.
Yeah, and then surviving the Boombots because they always hit for 4, you know, so easy.
Yeah, and if you ever want to clear Scarab Lord's Gong, then that's works perfectly.
I've been in that situation. It's horrible.
All right, so those are kind of the 3 big decks right now in Twist. You got your Control Warrior, you got your Jade / Cthulhu / Jade and Cthulhu rogues, whatever you want to call it, and then you have your Discard Warlock. And those are the 3 strongest decks. If you guys want to play those, or if you want to win, hit Legend, things like that, those are probably the 3 decks that you should pilot before any balance changes that happen. But now I think we should pivot to some of the fun stuff that we've been playing. Some not top tier, not the 3 strongest decks in the format. And we can just go like one by one. Roffle, I know you've been playing a lot of stuff, but if you had to pick one to start with today that you want to share with people, what have you been jamming?
If I had to pick one, I would pick 2. And the first one would be like Control Crusher Shaman. Man, I just love shuffling White Eyes into my deck and bringing them back. There's so many situations where like I queued into Reno Priest and I was just like, oh, the game starts and there's like all of my effort just goes into getting an advantage in fatigue and winning that way. And I forgot how much I missed that. Just like Death Lords, bringing them back, like doing silly things like playing Ancestral Spirit on a Death Lord, or playing multiple Ancestral Spirits on a White Eyes just so that I can get like those 3 or 4 extra card advantage in fatigue. Only to find out that it doesn't really matter because I have the Alakir Hero and win that way. But like, it's it's a lot of fun to like revisit that strategy. And then speaking of Reno Priest, like that is a lot of fun to pilot as well. I forgot how much fun Reno Priest is without Raza, just like ending games before.
Without Anduin, you mean?
Or yeah, sorry, Anduin. Just kind of ending games before like I don't know, you have to think. Like you just kind of like so much of your effort once Anduin was released was spent towards, okay, how do I kill the opponent now? And with this iteration of Reno Priest, like that is removed from it, so you have to instead spend time developing, okay, so how do I kill the opponent? You don't have that like baked into the deck anymore, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I haven't had the chance to try the Reno stuff. Well, I tried Reno Lock, but I haven't gotten to Reno Priest yet. Were you playing any Dragons, Roffle, or just pure straight up Professor Paltrus type stuff?
Well, I was playing both. That's where don't be silly. Yeah, I was playing a bit of Dragons. New 7-drop is pretty silly. And then I know we don't have like the discover priority for Priest, but like that many dragons, so you can discover additional copies pretty quickly and easily off of that. Like there are a lot of situations where I played multiple of that card in a single game, and it's pretty nasty.
Yeah, when I've been toying around with stuff that isn't like the main 3 decks, I've been playing Hunter, like a lot, like Undertaker Hunter, Aggro Buzzard, Undertaker Hunter, and that deck's pretty decent. Super fun, like Ball of Spiders, MVV, probably best card in the deck. I don't know. Ball of Spiders so strong right now, which bit of a shocker. It's your best Undertaker fuel, your best like just value tempo tool, and also insane with Buzzard if you ever get to like the super late game like that. So I don't know, it's awesome. Undertaker kills people when it becomes a 7/8. So just pro tip on that: if you can get your Undertaker that big, that would be pretty smart. I don't know. Hunter's like. Like the way I would tier the format right now is there are like 3 decks in tier 1, no decks in tier 2, and then we get to tier 3, and that's when we start talking about stuff. I think Undertaker is one of those like tier 3 decks, but I think that Undertaker's worst matchups are Rogue, Warrior, Warlock. So like, yeah, that's kind of the problem if the format is highly dominated by Rogue, Warrior, Warlock. But I think that this deck has a lot of legs if they go after these main decks in the initial patch. This could definitely become like one of the best decks in Twist if it goes untouched. So a lot of face damage, a lot of draw, very fun. Enjoyed Undertaker Beast Hunter a lot.
You know how they can make Face Hunter compete with those tier 1 decks? They could just buff Undertaker to get +2/+2 every time they play a Death Rattle, just like they did with Tiny Knight, and that would help a lot, I think.
Yeah, that's what we need. That is absolutely what we need.
Good chat.
All right, what decks should I talk about? I think the deck that I enjoyed the most on day 1 of Twist was Anyfin Paladin, bringing back kind of the OTK deck with War Leaders and Bluegills and stuff. I messed around with a couple of different builds. I was playing like a pure control deck with like Equalities and Consecrates and N'Zoth and things like that with Lay on Hands. And then I tried, I know when we were doing Theater Crafting Core, we talked a lot about how you just kind of have the broken dude stuff in the format with like Muster, Warhorse Trainer, and Stand Against Darkness. And so I was kind of playing more like a mid-range Paladin deck that just had an Anyfin kind of kill you in the late game. And both of them did really well. I was holding like 70% win rate with both of those decks. Until people started, refining and playing the good, rogue decks. And that felt really bad when my stuff got Jade telegrammed. But Rooney, I think, is just as good as advertised. Just like always hit the location that draws you 2 cards that swap stats, and then you're like set to go. But even the ones that were like I kind of slept on, the ones like adding 3 Paladin secrets and casting them, like even that's just like really good. So I've been having a lot of fun with Anyfin Paladin. It was like a real nostalgic throwback, but then it ended up just being really good, and so it was excited to see that. I put in a formal request to get War Leader on nerfs, and I think if we can do that, we're good to go.
Yeah. Anything Paladin looks really solid. Like another one of these like tier 3 type things, which makes it one of the best like non, main 3 decks in the format. So yeah, anything pretty good.
Yeah, it seems like anything that isn't Druid or Mage is has at least a playable deck in the format, and even Druid's probably okay. Like you still have Eye Stalk of Cthulhu, right?
Druid's really bad.
Yeah. No, it is. Every time I queue into Druid, I know I'm gonna have time to set stuff up. Like the only redeeming quality is that Eye Stalk, and like it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
I feel like if those 3 decks get changed and decks are just like a lot more board centric, like aggressive stuff without disrupt, there's a lot of ifs and caveats there. But not Jade Druid, Cthulhu Druid plays a ton of taunts. I don't know how much that matters, but like you have like Veclors and Eyestalk and the Claxy Amberweaver and the 4-mana taunt. Like it's a lot of taunts and a lot of healing. I don't know when that's really going to matter. That it's like if it's not good enough now, I don't know how much it's going to be better post nerfs, but it does have that going for it.
I feel like it's the taunts that it makes are just like worse than the taunts that the Warrior makes, and then it has like an overall worse game plan than Warrior. So I don't think it matters. And then like on top of that, even in the Cthulhu stuff, like it's just always going to lose to the Rogue Blade of Cthulhu, which then makes their eye stock outrageously large. So like it's weird that Rogue has the best like late game Cthulhu game plan right now, just because of like how overbuffed Blade of Cthulhu is and the interaction between obviously that and Cthulhu, but also like recently when I've been playing Cthulhu decks in Twist, the card that wins the game is the eye stock, and I never need to play the Cthulhu. I spent 2 hours not drawing the Cthulhu when I was trying to play Cthulhu Warrior recently, and like it didn't matter because I was still winning like 60% of my games without drawing Cthulhu, just by like, you know, drawing the eye stock, and that card kind of ends it.
Yeah, I think like Aggro Druid isn't awful. Like it's almost playable with the Rat Sensei and like Knight of the Wild, but any sort of like Ramp Druid looks just horrific, like so bad. And that's usually what people think of when they talk about Druid. It's kind of like how people talk about Warrior, and it's like they only think about Control Warrior. You know, people just want to think of Ramp Druid, and that stuff is bad. So yeah, I think there's too much of a gap between Druid and the top decks. But I hope that whenever they do balance changes, I hope they just absolutely hammer the shit out of these top 3 decks. I don't want to see the balance changes that we got last Twist. I was very vocal last time that I wanted harsher changes or different changes than what we got. Like I was saying, hey, don't do Glide, because Glide's like the worst card in the deck. I don't, you know, like I know people get a feels bad moment about Glide, but like if you nerf Glide, Demon Hunter is going to be the best deck. And then Demon Hunter was basically the best deck. So I think that like if you make changes to Warlock and Warrior and Rogue, I would hope that they are just aggressive changes. Like let's not do this again for another like 4 weeks, please.
More than that.
Yeah, assuming this is like not even the only bounce patch, but if it is like the only patch, then yeah, just destroy them. Well, not destroy them, but like, come on, like, let's not do like one change to location, like one minor little card number, or like we barely change the Scarab, we make that all 0-1, that's it. No, just like, just get in there, make changes.
These decks are what, like 4 or 5% win rate higher than everything else? Like you got to bring them down. Higher than that? Oh god.
Yeah.
Like
they're
8 to 10. Like
Jesus.
There are 3 classes with a positive win rate in this format right now.
All right. So hey Blizz, nuke these decks or nuke these cards. Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah, I'm down for that. Anything else you guys want to talk about in terms of Twist? Any decks that you're looking to try out or things like that? Cards you're keeping an eye on?
I will say just like my general vibe of Twist right now, because like, I've said this on other platforms, but not on the podcast, obviously. My general feel of Twist, if you're interested in trying it, like it does feel very old school Hearthstone in a lot of ways. So like if you do miss that kind of old feel, it's kind of like old school Hearthstone with modern day power level. That is how I would describe the format mostly. There are a couple outliers like location and you know, like that's fine. But in terms of like how the games feel, how board centric they are, the type of strategies, the lack of discover, really weird. The lack of rush, super weird. In terms of all that stuff, it is a huge throwback and it is very fun. And I think the fact that we have hit on these 3 decks being things that are fresh because they weren't playable in Gadget Sam in that era of Hearthstone is actually really cool. Like it is that reimagining of that old format. And we are trying cards and strategies that we never got to. And we are trying to And so it has sort of tapped into a lot of excitement, especially when it comes to Jade Rogue, I think, and people are really excited to play that. I think that's all great. Obviously, they will make some changes and stuff, but I think that, as Roffle mentioned earlier, this is kind of what you would hope that Twist is like in the first go around. Like, this is kind of what we want, this type of format and this type of feel, and what we can do with this and with these rule sets. So I'm really excited. I'm just looking for whatever balance changes they make, but I think that so far it's been really great. And the monetization, as far as I've seen, I'm not an expert because, like, I'm not, sweating about like not having enough cards right now. That's just the position I'm in when it comes to Hearthstone. Like, I just don't think about it that much these days. But from what I can tell, it's not too bad. Like, I didn't have EU and Asia cards, and I was able to sort of scrounge up some stuff when I had to go on those servers. So it seems okay. Obviously, cheaper is better, and we would always want it to be more accessible. But it seems like a better go-around than previously. So, I don't know. Twist in general, continue to be very hyped for it.
I don't. I'm in a similar vein to. I'm not an expert on the monetization. The only like strong positive that I saw was with the pre-made decks giving different like levels of entry with the gold prices. I think was a good deal. Like, I think some of them were what, like 1,000 gold. That's it's a pretty good deal if the decks are like coherent and playable in the format. Just to like dip your toes in. It's not it's like it's less than a mini set and it gives you a cohesive deck. So it is still difficult for non-returning players or players that are returning from an era outside of like the era that's associated with Twist to come in. And then there's also like, how many resources do you actually want to spend on this if like 3 months is what you're going to get? There's like also the issue because it's using the legacy set instead of the core set, which, there is some overlap, but like a lot of those cards are not readily available to players and don't have much use outside of Twist. So like there are definitely some downsides with like the accessibility, even if it is maybe a little bit better than some of the events that they've done in the past. I think there is still room for improvement, and I think that could be hindering some of like its potential lower play rate and popularity.
Yeah, I don't really know how you solve that, given that like the nature of Twist is that things are going to change frequently, and so I'm not sure about that. I do want to touch on, they did announce that anything that was in this Caverns of Time, like this format, is going to be staying around for 3 months. They did confirm that, so like you can craft cards from Caverns and things like that you might have been missing, and they'll be around for 3 months. And so specific rules might change. Like we might get something similar to what we saw in beta, where like, oh, all of a sudden, okay, I don't think the no neutrals is a good example here because that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. But they might do Twist, right? Where like sometimes you get like the Discover bonus back next month, or you get 40 card decks or something like that, where they might do Twist, but it feels like the Wonders format with Caverns is going to be around for 3 months. Is kind of the gist that I got from that announcement. I don't know if I'm misreading that. I don't know if you guys... I'm not spreading misinformation here.
No, I believe that was explicitly stated, that the Caverns of Time, or like this block of cards, should be present for the next at least 3 months. The problem is that like spending resources for cards that are only available for 3 months is a lot different than like somebody playing Standard and spending resources on cards that they know are going to be available for 2 years. So like that's a pretty big difference, like, and if you have relatively few spare resources, in particular dust or gold, like it's understandable that your priority would be on the ones that like are playable for the next 2 years rather than the next 3 months.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not sure exactly how they can address that, given that, again, that the nature of Twist is that things are going to change. I would have loved to see like cheaper packs and cheaper stuff for a while, but I know we've been talking about that for years, and I can't ever really see them implementing that. But I feel like that would have made the best sense for stuff like Twist and Wild. But
I think that as somebody who has been pretty vocally against a subscription option for like acquiring cards in Hearthstone, I think Twist is the perfect place where that would actually make sense, because then you get the cards for the format, you it makes sense to rent them because you're not going to use them or you don't need them in your collection. I mean, it wouldn't make sense for me because like I play Wild and I'm going to continue using them, but like it makes sense for a player wanting to dip their toes in. If they don't like a particular twist, they stop their subscription. I think that would be this is the place above any other where a subscription model would make the most sense, and could potentially be an additional like outlet for revenue for Blizzard. I think it's theoretically, if done right, it could be a win-win, but I doubt we'll see it, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, one last little thing, and this is maybe a little bit selfish request, but I would have really loved to see an option to just buy the new cards from Caverns of Time, like the 34. I know that's probably like a 1% of the 1% thing, but it felt really weird. I didn't buy packs for Caverns of Time. I just crafted the cards that I was missing, and so I'm still missing a lot of cards from Caverns of Time, and I'm gonna have to like go in and craft them whenever I want to go play that deck. But it was a little bit weird.
There's a lot of weirdness with how they implemented Caverns of Time in general, like including they weren't clear that like the buff cards were suddenly part of this new set that you could then the buffed cards and only the buffed cards were part of this new set that you could open in packs. It created some confusion. People thought like duplicate protection wasn't working when it was. People still think it wasn't working when it was. That was compounded by like a collection manager bug, but like it was also just like not clearly, there's not a clear delineation between those things that create like that was bound to create confusion.
Yeah. Oh, one last comment. Hey, Deck Tracker, can we fix the thing where you have two different, like you have one Caverns card and one of the TGT card, and then it shows up separately on the deck? It's so annoying.
That's not a Deck Tracker issue. That's a Hearthstone issue.
All right, Hearthstone, like, you fix it then, not Deck Tracker.
It does it in Hearthstone too. Basically, because the cards are the same but in a different set, they're like they have a different code as a AD or code associated with them, which is again, it's confusing. There's like. Not to harp on an old issue, but people talk about like, oh, it would be great if there were different versions of wild cards and standard cards. Like these are versions of cards that are played in the same format and it created chaos within the player base. So I think this is clear evidence that we can't handle that.
Low-key small issue on my end as well. It creates kind of a nightmare scenario for HS Replay, because if you have like a 30-card deck, you could have like, I don't know, like 20 different versions because they all have different combinations of the Caverns card and like the TGT card, and they all get categorized into different lists. And it means you never have enough data on this exact 30 because you need the exact same list to add up and like actually pop up on the page. So it's very annoying for that.
I think to summarize, like the entire issue with all of this is that they like lumped in old cards into Caverns of Time needlessly, and that created confusion. It was less player friendly because like people that just wanted the new cards but didn't play during the old era got a lot of old cards. It created issues with people assuming duplicate protection wasn't working properly when they started opening old cards because they weren't aware that was even going to be a thing that could happen. And it was just like I like the set. I like the idea of a wild specific set. I think there are a lot of like things that maybe hopefully they will learn from and not do in the future as a result of like the way I don't like a lot of the ways that it was implemented.
All right, now I'm gonna take a little bit of a fun tone here, not serious tone at least. The way that we solved the HS Replay issue is that you guys joined Corb's Discord or you joined my Discord and net those specific deck codes, and so that everybody's playing the exact same deck code no matter what, and then that way we can get information for Corb. Help this poor guy. He's going crazy without the stats. You got to help him out here. But also to help with this issue, we got packs to give away. I think I'm gonna segue into this hashtag ad. Courtesy of Blizzard, we got some packs to give away, some Caverns of Time packs in a bundle to give away to you guys that are listening here towards the end of the episode. Just like all the other giveaways that we do on our channel. All you gotta do is click the little link in the description, answer the 2 questions to fill out the form to prove that you're not a bot, and then I'll pull a winner by the end of the week. So easy to enter. I'll be giving away that again. Thanks to Blizzard for providing those Caverns packs. And speaking of thanks, Corbin Roffle, thanks for joining me week after week. Thanks for joining me to talk about Twist. Let the people know where they can find you, streaming and playing it.
Yeah, you can find me streaming both on Twitch and YouTube at Roffle, and daily videos on YouTube.
And you can find me at Corbett on Twitch or Corbettgames on X or YouTube.
The X salad. I hate it. I hate it. You guys can find me at GetMeowth on all those platforms. Thanks again to everybody that listens week after week, all the way to the end. Appreciate you guys a ton. Join the giveaway, and we'll see you guys again next week. Later.